GSEC workshop, creating effective poster presentation and roundtable presentation. As you know, we have coming ACSERS, annual graduate student educational research symposium on March 19th. So we hope that this workshop will be helpful for you in preparing your presentations for that symposium. So our speakers today, Dr. Newton and Dr. Burdick. Dr. Newton, she's a faculty member in mathematics education, and she will talk about mostly about poster presentation, right? And Jack Burdick, he's a visiting professor in curriculum studies, and he will mostly talk about roundtable presentation. So, first we will see, I will see what we will talk about, and then maybe the audience, we will get the questions from the audience. Okay?
Perfect.
Okay.
Maybe can we do introductions so we kind of know who's in our audience?
Okay, so just provide a very brief introduction about yourself so we can also get
Maybe your name and your
name and-
program area, research interest, and what year you're in, maybe something like that.
Yeah, cool. So let's
Hi everyone, my name is Joka. I am an Indian student in curriculum studies. My area of interest is TESOL, teaching English as a second language.
And you're in what year, did you say?
Sorry?
Did you say what year you're in?
This is my first year.
First year.
just we are getting a very brief introduction about ourselves and research.
Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Shunyan. I'm from the Second Language Study program in the English department. I'm a third-year PhD student.
Hello, my name is Troy from Thailand, and we are in the same program in ESL, and then I'm second year PhD student.
Hi, I'm Chingy, and I'm from Taiwan, and I'm in the studies.
My name is Kenji Offlin. I'm a first-year sociology student, and I'm interested in education, race/gender, within the context of the internet.
I'm Hannah.
Of the internet.
Yes.
Interesting.
I'll find you.
I'm Hannah. I'm a second year in the chemistry department, chemical education. My research interests involve applying research findings in the classroom.
My name is Marshall Clausen. I'm a second year PhD student in literacy and language education. I'm interested in English language learners in the K through 12 classroom, content area specialities.
This is only your second year?
Yeah,
I feel like you've been here longer.
feels like it.
Hi, I'm Reiko. I'm from Japan. This is my third year of PhD program, then in curriculum studies. My concern area is investigating the experience of learning as a sojourner temporary resident students in Midwest.
Hi, I'm Ben. I'm in my second year PhD in literacy and language, and my kind of areas are teacher education, literacy, and technology.
Hi, my name is Mike. I'm third year PhD student in MECAD, and actually I'm interested in preserve teachers' learning of geometry by using technology.
I'm second year math education, and my interest is in mathematical modeling and also teacher education.
Hi everybody, and my name is Gabriela Khan, and I'm a second year PhD student. I know, you know, but I got my master also in the same department. So this is my second year in my PhD, and I'm especially interested in schools in the United States. So Hannah, we are introducing ourselves very briefly.
Oh, okay.
And you are the last one.
Like everyone in the room?
Yes.
Oh, my name is Hannah Sassa, and I'm a PhD student in curriculum studies.
No.
And
What year? What's your interest?
in my first year, and I have many interests. Nasty, we're introducing ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay. I just
Keep going.
It's you.
And you're actually on camera, too.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Was it
Well, hi everyone, I'm Nasi. I'm a second year PhD student in the Curriculum Studies department. And what else should I say?
What are you interested in?
Research interest.
Oh, I'm interested, like my research mainly focuses on international education, the experiences of international students. And I'm at the verge of narrowing it down, but don't ask me what right now.
Great. Okay. So,
Do you want to go round tables first, or do you
yeah,
want to go
it's
with
you go ahead. I really don't mind.
So we'll save the best for last.
I'm interested, because I don't know, this is the first year they've had roundtables, right, at the,
Right.
so I'm interested in hearing how that's gonna go.
Well, I think one thing that's really nice about this is roundtables are starting to become the sort of go-to method for conferences, just because you can fit a lot of people in one large ballroom or something like that. So you can have a lot of presentations going on simultaneously. So initially, I'm a SIG chair for AERA, so we get an allotment of maybe 2 or 3 presentation spaces where we can have just a group of people presenting to an audience, and we get tons of roundtables, depending on how many people we have submit to our SIG and things like that. So I think it's really nice to have this practice for roundtables, and I think it's some people don't like it as much as the sort of the what I consider less interactive. I lecture to you about my research for 10 minutes or so, and then maybe later you can ask questions. That roundtables are really nice, in my opinion, because there's a less formality. There's more of a sort of openness, more of a sort of sharing of information. But that said, there's sort of a different way you have to prepare yourself to go into these things. So depending on sort of a conference, what your style is, things like that, a lot of people will read their papers if they're giving the paper as a sort of lecture. That's really uncommon in roundtables. So that it's more of a conversational tone. If you sort of read it, people, I think within the roundtable space, then it kind of shuts down that collaborative effort. So one good way to go into it is to think about your research in very plain language. Typically roundtables are going to have 2 to 3 presenters at each table, and then an array of people that are there likely for one of the presenters. So you have to think your audience might be a little more diverse than it would be if you were just giving a paper. So you have to think about the sort of lay language you'll use. It's really good to sort of develop a conversational approach to your paper. Have your paper, there's a sort of font, kind of, the headings and the topics and what you go through, and check back in with it, but really to give the papers a very informal manner, because I think that invites the sort of conversation. Depending on how the organization of the presentations go, you'll usually be paired up with people that have similar interests. Sometimes I've seen really creative roundtables, and I've been very impressed with how different the papers look in a program or something like that. When you get together, there's really a commonality. I think that there's some really good deep reading by program chairs, things like that. So, but there tends to be this really interesting dynamic of sharing of information. So that said, what I would kind of do to prepare from what I do when I go into a roundtable is I try to stay away from PowerPoint. It tends to be a little bit tight in terms of space to have your computer turn it, kind of magically work it from the other side, that sort of thing, to forward slides. And I like to usually give handouts, that maybe I give my PowerPoint slides as handouts, or maybe I just have a sort of one-pager that goes through the general things I'm going to be talking about in short form. That way everyone kind of stays on the same page as you, and they can have sort of a touchstone to go back and forth to. They can listen to you, and you kind of talk to the bullets or whatever you put on there, and kind of move out from that and open it up, and they have something to take notes on, things like that. It's really helpful to sort of have that. And then I also bring a couple of copies of my actual paper that I'm giving the full written up piece, depending on how interested I am in sharing at that point. Sometimes I tend to use conferences as a workshop, and that's just if somebody wants it at the end of the presentation. So it's nice to have that kind of thing. So that said, the things you can kind of expect are less of the sort of critical questions and more of a sort of building sense of questions. So I'm thinking particularly AERA. There tends to be a sort of tenor in AERA talk when you're giving a paper, that the questions that come afterwards tend to have a more critical tone. Whereas within the roundtable space, there seems to be a more collaborative, sort of interesting working through different kinds of ideas, things like that. So that's some of the positives I see. Some of the negatives are when you're in this giant room full of people, it gets hard to sort of populate every round table, so you have to be sort of, I mean, I'm just to be very honest, sometimes you'll be presenting to one person, sometimes you'll just be presenting to your co-presenters, things like that. And that's not, I don't think that's an effect of how good your paper is, or what the sort of value of the research you bring. It's an effect of having a gigantic room full of people, everyone having something likely very interesting to say, and people literally, as they make their way over, they make eye contact with somebody, they feel sort of compelled to go to their table, things like that. But that's the only sort of negative. Or that, and often you'll be presenting against, you know, and I know this is a very new faculty as a graduate student, it would be me and then biggest name in the field 2 tables over with, you know, rows and rows of people just waiting to hear what they have to say. And that's okay. I mean, it's just kind of the game, that sort of thing. So just to be kind of realistic about the expectations, that's what, I don't think the conference, you know, the AgSource conference is going to be anything like that. But when you go out and start doing this work in the field, I've presented to the person that just happened to be sitting there talking to me before the presentation. It was kind of strange. We were kind of chit-chatting, and then I had to turn it on, you know, oh, my research. It was a really weird, awkward moment, but still it fostered a really interesting dialogue, and I got a lot out of it. So, like I said, it's a very intimate, informal, nice environment. So I think that's all I have to say, sort of an introduction to it. There's not really much to the mechanisms of the design, but just really keeping it conversational and keeping it sort of giving your audience a chance to get into the research. You know, like high theory is probably a bad idea, and so that's the thing. So that's sort of.
So do you know how, I'm curious how it's gonna play out at the symposium, do we know that yet? I mean, so you have the poster session, are they separate sessions, or how will that work? I'm just curious.
No, well, posters and the round table, they are in the same section, but the round tables, they will be, I mean, placed maybe at a different corner of the ballroom. So, but they are they will be at the same session.
Oh, at the same time,
Yeah.
simultaneously.
Same space, but sort of removed, with 2 to 3 presenters per table.
Per table. Interesting. And when you submit either for a poster or a round table,
These are really good questions. What kind of time allotment is there, and how many presenters will you have at a table, do you think?
2 to 3 presenters per table.
Right.
And the time allotment, did we decide about 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
I thought we said 15 minutes each.
But that's a really nice amount of time. Usually you'll have 10, 12, so something like that. So 15 is really good. And you have to think, if you were to be reading a paper, people usually estimate about 2 minutes a page for reading, and that's a fast read, I would say too, that if I go 2 minutes a page, I'm kind of rushing through things. I tend to do that anyway, so you can probably hear right now. But even when you're being very conversational, really planning for that timeline, because that's a really sensitive thing, because you really do want to have that time for questions and answers afterwards, and you don't want to eat up somebody else's time. So I can't really stress that enough. It's extremely important, because you won't have a chair timing you, but you have to sort of be accountable, like bring your phone if it has a timer or something like that. Make sure that you stay within whatever framework you're doing.
everyone at the table will hate you.
Yes, very much so.
It's a way to get everyone in your field hate you very quickly.
Yeah.
Is to be the person who always goes over and takes everybody.
Exactly, and you don't want to go too far under. I mean, you
Yeah.
really want to get right at the time that's allotted to you, just to seem. You want it to be as fleshed out as possible, but not too much.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because in math education, rarely do you see someone read a paper. But I really think it's program area specific, because I have been in places where that was like the norm of the conference. And at AERA you really see it, because some of the sessions are, you have all the program areas there together. So it's interesting to, you really need to know your field, because in our field really no one reads papers at really any of our conferences. It's not the norm to read, so it's interesting.
And within our field even, it's kind of really what conference you go to. Some of the more informal conferences, we have a lot of small conferences, and it would be really weird to read those.
Yeah.
But then at AERA specifically, I think when you see like the curriculum studies folks, some of the, it seems like, I don't want to age the thing, but it seems like some of the older folks like to read their papers more than the younger folks, and I don't know if that's a generational thing, that was sort of the standard at that time or something like that. But I know my chair read all of his papers.
Yeah, so maybe it is, I don't know earlier in math ed if maybe that was something that we did more. But again, really important to know, if you're submitting a paper for a conference, to talk to your faculty, talk to the more advanced doc students who have been to those conferences, to just make sure that whatever it is you're doing is what everyone else is kind of gonna be doing there. So I have being the teacher that I am, sorry, I thought we would do just a little activity together, sorry. So I'm gonna ask you to work with one another. I think groups of 3 is what's making me happy here, but I would like you to try to work with, in your group of 3, at least one person you don't know. That's what I would ask. So I'm gonna allow you guys to go ahead and, do you want me to just point to people, or do you want to group yourselves? What makes you happier? Group yourself. Okay, so group yourself, groups of 3, and then I'll talk to you about what I want you to do.
Do you know nothing?
No.
And if you have your laptop, write it out, that'd be great. If you don't have one, no, I'm not giving you paper just yet.
They're gonna participate?
Yeah.
In the sense that.
No, so no, sorry, 3 people.
Okay,
three.
just
3 or 4 if you have to, if it doesn't work out. I think it's too hard to talk about this in a bigger group. Okay. 4, okay, I can live with it. Okay, so if you have a laptop, again, I'd appreciate if you get it out. I know some of you do, some of you don't, which is fine. What I've put together is just a series of questions. And some of these, none of these have right or wrong answers. They're all really questions for discussion. So you can put in this space, you can put your opinion about what it should be. You can look online and see if you can find what some really smart person who's an expert in poster development said about it. And I want you to work through this set of questions with your group of 3 or 4, and then we'll come together and kind of chat through them together. How's that feel? Okay? Here, I'll just give you those. Pass around.
Not this year. You have last year they had 12.
And also, if you have anything else, if you read something else that you think or find, or think of something else you think besides these questions that would be interesting, just make a note of it. Jot it down.
Did you have it, Seiko?
Are you presenting at this conference?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Poster event?
I'll present.
Right, that would be a full.
Are you presenting?
No. Actually, I just heard about this conference like an hour ago. So,
yeah, I'm
but
doing
my
a
friend
one
who's
with my
studying
research team doing a round table.
that, so maybe
Right.
So that I never done any kind of poster presentation before.
20 points. So, for the largest, what do you think the smallest are? You want to look that up?
I think I've heard some.
What is the smallest or largest one you should be on a poster? Oh.
Tap it in Google.
Hold on. I am going to be strategic about it. Because the Center for Instructional Excellence has...
Like poster guidelines?
Well,
Actually, there are many templates about these rules, so you can find them as well. As last year when I prepared my poster.
Yeah? They tell you?
No, there are many templates about which includes all these rules.
Probably you can find 5 resources and they will also be
Title should be recorded.
Title is the
Let's just listen to what they're saying. This says sectional week.
Ben, are you presenting at the conference?
I'm not doing a poster.
He's doing a round table.
24 points
For the text, at least, minimum.
and 36 for heading.
Right, and this is, again,
not comic sans.
the minimum. 24. Oh, they say a sans serif font. Use a sans serif font for most text. It's easier to read.
I always prefer
Sans serif doesn't have like the little lines on it.
No, Times New Roman's got that.
Well, sans serif doesn't have these lines.
Yeah,
these
like
extra
the
lines.
corner one.
Yeah.
Yeah, small one.
So any like
Serif, yeah.
Oh, wait.
like maybe we can.
No.
Oh,
Serif for text, sans serif for heading.
Okay, sans serif for heading and titles.
So I missed the first one.
So they say serif.
No, like first question.
Oh, well this source, which we don't know,
Oh, okay.
says a minimum of 24 points of text and 36
We
for the
just
heading.
found the website.
Oh!
We're making it up.
36 for heading.
Oh, I saw the limit of words.
Min.
50 words or fewer.
For what?
For the limit of words that you should have on your roster. Or is that just for?
What's the limit to the number of words you have? You're only gonna have 50 words? No, you're not.
It says keep text elements to 50 words. Maybe like your little elements. So the little blotty blots.
The limit. Okay, so serif for text.
So like any place where you've got 50 or text, it should be 50 words or less.
Yeah, but so what's that total? Well, do the math.
Well, I'm gonna suggest you.
I don't know. I'm trying to find
The way it's structured is which is kind of
How about social science?
research is
Sorry, put one piece in the.
Well, I'm just been to the dissertation symposium or workshop.
I'm just making up now.
What is going to be the
Yeah.
We have no idea.
Shrenisha's gonna do it.
What do we
Looks
read?
like
Let's
animation.
make it like Twitter.
minimum font size.
160 characters or less.
Should be 80, 70.
15 minutes. 10 minutes?
Let's not.
I think so. I think 10.
We have to go over several like another 10 minutes for
Questions? Great idea.
it shouldn't be like it's like a book, right?
That's true. 1,000? So like, basically, if we imagine like your
I would say
10 pages.
5 paragraphs.
My paragraph?
Text diagrams twice.
So I think like one paragraph.
5 big paragraphs.
Yeah, but like it should be very not brute. So like I think we should avoid some
So
big chunk of
you gotta assign a percentage.
Oh, so, okay.
Right.
text, like summarize or
For diagrams? Well, I would think that posters would be more visual, right? I think it'd be more important to have stuff like that than text. I'm just reasoning through this. I don't know.
That depends on how big the poster is.
Are you sure?
I'm just waiting.
300 words would be one. Yeah, that's yours. A paragraph? Marshall,
So,
what paragraph is it?
I think the less text, the better.
Like usually, when we take 200
Paragraphs,
say like,
pages,
let's give around one page, one page, one word.
Right, so
Usually the whole poster should be one page.
let's say 70.
But I think we
So
can
like 20 text and 10 white space? I have no idea. I'm making this all up. seriously.
This says that you have 11 seconds to capture someone with your poster before they move on. So it's better to have less text, I think. So what question is that? 5. So you say text?
Text I said 20, diagrams I said 70, white space I said 10.
I'm going to change this slightly. So 30, 60, and 10.
Whatever you say.
We could have different opinions, even though we're in the same
After you explain and then they read. So I'm assuming
website.
it's like 10 more minutes.
Number 6. I would think the most important information would be at well, if we read left to right, but on posters you kind of almost read top down.
Where else is the information go?
Last time I
Top?
So to type, yeah, top.
67 people during the 90 minutes.
And right, imagine like we have.
And like the headings of the
Sometimes
Not only in the top headings in the top, all the headings.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes like
Good.
especially professor level, they ask me.
Oh, wait, this is title should be at least 85, even though it's the same document. Headings 36, and titles, like the main title, 85.
How big are those every time?
Actually, it depends
85
on
points.
how big is the like the paper. It's gonna change. So it's gonna change based on the template of the.
Depends on size of poster.
Yeah, size of the poster.
I'm from Arizona.
Oh no.
I know.
60%
That's mild.
30% diagrams and 1%
That's right back to me tonight.
They could be.
Don't cheat.
No, you were.
Really, really nasty. The ink on this is dry. It's been written down for quite some time.
I think you just wrote it down, just what I said. Since I have so much knowledge of
Since you have such a loud voice. And Ben has such a quiet.
knows who has a loud voice in our department.
My last.
Are you talking across the
Well, we don't want to, but unfortunately Nasty's voice
turnings around?
carries. Perforates my eardrum.
Do you want me to move her somewhere else?
Could you?
See, we have this planned out together. This is just like round table. You'll have people like us do it really loud. I'm trying to scare her.
Jake knows exactly. Dr. Burdick knows
Okay,
that it's not worth
we're trying to work
upsetting
here.
you.
Can we get back to
Yes. Shall we?
number 7?
I know that I'm sorry.
Who do we think we should consider as our audience? Somebody who doesn't know our topic, right?
Okay, you guys, about 5 more minutes.
Someone unfamiliar with your topic.
It should be everybody, so we should have like a simple description of our paper for everybody. We shouldn't presenting like our colors.
Person who wants to know the
It's gotta be, I think it's gotta be a mixture.
Yeah, it's gonna take the same equal amount of.
Because content's gotta be super important, but so does your presentation.
Actually, presentation is important. Even if the content is too stupid, you cannot present it. It doesn't matter. Yeah. It should be equal.
Yeah, I think all of them.
But maybe nobody will even get to your content if the presentation is not good.
Yeah, but your content drives your presentation.
And then like the layout presentation.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Not the words you said.
Oh, see, I thought it was. Because they're not gonna look at your poster necessarily, they're gonna look at you and if you like them, they'll explain the poster to you. And then they're not gonna read everything that you're saying, so they're gonna pay attention to what you're saying, right?
So you have to look.
You have to wear a tie.
But I've seen pictures of the passwords and people do.
Wear a sports coat. Are we gonna be, you're not sure that we're not gonna do the same round.
So in the round table, what you are supposed to
Food, information you don't need. Sorry.
What
more like a conversation.
Yeah, conversation.
Okay, one more minute. You ready?
Is that not yours? Nope. You travel a long way.
I have a spare shirt here, but I've already used the spare shirt. Still not in the spare
No, I don't
Yeah, not yet.
Table.
I'm not really a fan of like things just appearing out of nowhere.
You round.
Yeah, so we're probably gonna have to.
Guys, and how did the last question?
大丈夫。
Chloe, how's it going?
So my life is a bit miserable right now. You know April, right? Yeah.
It's your third year. It's only the second year, right?
Right, but then things I just want to get it done. The things that I didn't teach during my first semester, so I could take my whole classes during my 8 classes during my first year. So it's kind of fast. The thing is that I'm still there, but I haven't finished all my courses yet. So I just want to get it done first. I'm struggling with the first. Just want to pass it. I mean, Tina wants to pass it.
Okay, you guys, let's share. Smallest and largest font. What did you find, or what do you think? And again, there's no right answers. In fact, in my search on the internet for some of this stuff, I found really conflicting information. You know, somebody says this and another person says not that. So I think it's really tricky, and of course, all about preference and audience and all those kinds of things. So, but what did you guys find about font? What do you think? Or what are you thinking when you think about font on a poster?
They divided it into the title and the body of the poster.
Oh, yeah.
So they have, for instance, for the title 72, and for the body between 24 and 48. Yes, so it's a really range.
What did you find for a minimum? Did anybody find a minimum?
16.
18 minimum. I think somewhere I found 18, somewhere I found 14. 24 minimum, even for text.
Yep.
Wow. I think too it depends on the poster. How many people have been to this session before, so they know kind of what it looks like? Okay, because the space, how many feet would you say the person, those of us who think in feet or meters, I don't know, how far from what would be the longest, the furthest away someone could be? Maybe, yeah, something like that. What do you think? A meter, maybe a meter. So it's not, you know, sometimes a poster, somebody might be reading it from far away, but in our situation, usually it's about a meter, so I would say you could go a little bit, it seems like 24 to me feels a little bit big-ish. So I think you could maybe go down to 18 or something, it seems like.
I would think so, yeah, not to do it to cramp content, I think the point, you know. So.
Yes, yes. What about types of font? Types of font?
This source that we found says sans serif is easier to read for headings and titles, but they should have serif for the text.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is one of the ones where I found conflicting. Sorry. Where I found conflicting information, but that's interesting. So they're saying, say again what you're saying.
They said sans serif for the headings and titles.
So for the headings and titles, you don't want that hanging thing because you
Right.
want it to be really clear and bold.
But then the serif for the actual text.
And what did you find? Did you guys find anything else about mixing fonts? Did it seem like that they were encouraging that or not encouraging that? What do you think? No, I'm seeing no. So you think one font and stick with it? How many, or can you vary it a little bit, or it's better not to vary it at all?
Not a gravity answer. Stay consistent.
Stay consistent. So, but then that would, you couldn't do that then, right?
Well,
If
it's
you-
Well,
about
sans
all your
serif and
headings
serif
are the
are
same
Okay.
font, and then all your
Consistent
text.
Pretty
and
similar. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe a couple different fonts, using one for, and did they name any fonts that they thought were particularly good, or when you think of fonts that you think would be particularly good, what do you think?
The sans serif they said was Helvetica.
Helvetica? Yeah.
And then Times New Roman for the serif.
For the serif?
probably not Comic Sans.
Yeah, no.
Avoid at all costs.
Yeah.
That was actually.
Although
fun.
it's my personal favorite, but I don't use it on posters, but I like it. And also, I found this thing about underlining, bolding, and italics, that those are good things to use, but never all together. So you don't have to bold it and italicize it and underline it. To use those things very carefully, around your poster when you really want to emphasize something. I read about uppercase. Did anybody else find anything about uppercase, that it was good or bad, or? I found one that said not to use all uppercase, not even on your title. But I don't know, because I kind of like the look of a all uppercase title. So play with it a little bit, see what you think. Really important, this is kind of an aside, but that you have at least one or two people review your poster, have them look at it, have them read through it, have them look at it carefully in the details, but also have them look at it, as a whole. Is it aesthetically pleasing? Are you trying to say too much, which is typically what we do, what I'm probably doing right now. Okay, just for a sample. How about the number of words? Now, I didn't really find anything about the number of words, but I did find things about percentage of space, which is number 5. What did anybody find anything or want to give any suggestions about any of those things? Number of words or space or?
We thought particularly interesting that 40% would be empty. Wow.
40%, I found 30 to 40%, depending on which website I was on, should be white space to make it aesthetically pleasing, that they really are that space. I found that surprising as well. And what else did you find about?
Diagrams 40% and text only 20%.
Whoa. Yeah, and this is a challenge, as Jake and I were just talking about, because, do you go by Jake? Oh. It's a challenge because a lot of us do qualitative research. So you have a lot more texty things to say and use than figures. So whenever possible, think about, how could I put this in a figure? Or even in a table where there's text in the table, but that kind of organizes it for the reader. I think that's the kind of thing to try to do. I don't know. Okay, what about talking through your poster? This is something that you do at this poster session because people are walking around. One thing I saw said to make sure to stand to the side, not to stand in front of it, which I think is obvious in most. I've seen some of you at poster sessions and you're never standing in front of it. But how long should you try to talk to a person about your poster? I mean, do you think? How much time do you think you're going to have their attention for?
About 5 minutes.
I would say max, maybe 5 minutes.
And the source we looked at said you've got 11 seconds for someone to decide whether they're going to stay and engage or walk on.
Oh, so what do you do in that 11 seconds? Kiss them? No.
It's a thought. That would work once. You got taken away. Well, you make a really awesome poster that makes them want to stay more than 11 seconds.
And it's this awkward, one situation I think that's very awkward is you've started to go and practice, right? Find somebody, or do it in front of your mirror even, whatever. If you can't find a friend that'll listen to you, even for 3 minutes, practice in front of your mirror. But when you're starting to present the poster, you're talking someone through the poster, right? Which you're only going to hit on the highlights. They don't want to hear the whole thing. And then another person walks up in the middle. What do we do at that moment? And kiss them. And then that will at least distract them for a minute while they pull themselves back together. No.
Maybe we can do a kind of really short summary what we talked about before, just in less than 1 minute if it is possible.
Yeah, because you don't want that person to just be
No.
standing there, right?
Yeah.
And you're always introducing yourself, right? Someone comes up, hi, I'm Jill, I'm the lead author on this poster, or, I'm working with my colleagues on this poster, or whatever. So everyone who walks up, no matter even if you're in the middle, right, you can always pause to, I think, introduce yourself.
Yeah, at least we need to do something.
Yeah, but then I think too, you could say, oh, I was just talking about the methods, or if you've just kind of started, maybe back up a little bit, and what do others think about that?
It's good. Good practice.
Yes,
So
yes.
what if newcomers keep coming? So do we go over and
And the one person is there like,
Well, I don't think I'm gonna just tell them after I explaining the first one. I just go back to the beginning, then just restart over. So like I tell them like, oh, I will explain later. So then I think if someone is really interested in the content, they won't go. Then they just look at the posters, then they can get some idea what the study is. So.
yeah. So you can always go back if they.
And you're in this weird sort of awkward space in between a sort of like a show model, like
Yeah.
hey, come see this. You have to kind of play the charisma card. It's nice to be excited and sort of happy about your research and things like that, but also you have to do the intellectual piece too. So it's a really awkward sort of space to be in, to where you really want people to come over and then you want to engage them in this really nice way. And I always found that a good thing to do as you kind of finish up is to ask them what their research is about. And then you can kind of figure out what the intersections are. And hopefully, unless you've got that waiting line, maybe don't do it then. But it's nice to foster that conversation, so you can see what their investments were. And then if you want to go in depth on something, if they're still sticking around, you can have that conversation at the level that they're sort of meeting the posters. That's a really good thing to think about. If someone seems interested and wants to stay around, to start asking them questions too. That it's okay to do that. So.
I think poster sessions are inherently a little bit awkward.
Yes.
Because sometimes you're just standing there like, but no matter the temptation, don't leave. Just stay there, because even if you're embarrassed, talk to the poster person next to you who's also embarrassed. So, but yeah, it is kind of an awkward thing. Okay, what about, we talked about that. What about how does someone read a poster, and where would you want to put your most important stuff? Do you think? I mean, I don't know the answer to this question. I just know what some people online said, but.
I mean, for actor case, I will put the most important thing in introduction, because most of the people they are leaving, they're not staying for a long time. So maybe I will make my introduction with the really colorful and kind of.
And what part of the poster would your introduction go in? Where does it go? I mean, where would you put it? How do you form that?
Top left.
Top left. So if you're a reader, so your reader is going to read probably down, down, down. I have seen people though where the middle is the heart of the poster. So I didn't find that online. No one said to do that, but I've seen it where people, yeah, right. Maybe we know better than them. We need our own website. But there is this kind of, what if you put the real heart of it in the middle and then put maybe extra pieces around the outside? I mean, that is another way to do it. Okay, so who's your audience? And let's talk about this particular poster session, even though, as Jake said, you have these poster sessions at conferences and so on. But in this particular poster session, who's going to be walking around, and what do they know typically? I mean, who are these people that are going to be there?
Most probably from the Department of Curriculum and Instruction.
Okay, so there's C&I people, or is it College of Ed, or just C&I?
College of Ed.
So it's all College of Ed, so they're all College of Ed, grad students, faculty.
And from other departments too.
And from other departments, outside of College of Ed, okay? And so what it's tricky, because what do you assume, like if I go to a math ed conference and I present a poster, I know a lot about what those people know. So, right, I can assume everybody knows some basic things about math ed. In this case, right, you don't have really that luxury. So how do you, how would you change what you do based on that fact that these people may not be from your field?
we shouldn't present like presenting our colleagues, so we should prefer to choose simple description of our research so everybody can understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think you can kind of assume everybody knows about educational research, but not about geometry using technology, for example, you know, so it's really, you may not get into as much depth as you might in a math ed conference or something like that, I don't know.
And it really helps, I think, to speak with people before you go into the session, show people your poster, talk through, and then ask them questions about what kind of jargon you're using. Because we get so comfortable with the language within our field that it becomes second nature to us. We don't even see it on the page, which we'll say things like
acronyms.
Yeah, or exact acronyms, things like that, or some certain research designs that are maybe more fringy in other fields than they are comfortable in your program area or something like that. So it really helps to have somebody that's. I tend to show things. My litmus test is always my mom. If my mom can understand something, just about anybody can, because she's really recalcitrant. She doesn't like intellectual stuff at all. So if I can get her to understand it, then we're cool.
Your grandma test, they used to call it too. So the tricky thing I think about a poster is it's somewhere between an oral presentation and a paper, right? A scholarly paper, and it's also somewhere in between kind of a scholarly work and a work that's to be visually stimulating and engaging and whatever. So sometimes the poster, the presentation you would use, or excuse me, the title you would use on your research paper, you might slightly vary that in order to make it a little bit more catchy for a poster. Again, particularly because your audience is not going to be math educators or curriculum studies folks or whatever. So you might think about your title, wow, can I make this a little bit less dry, which they typically for research papers are pretty dry, and can I make it a little bit more engaging for somebody who walks by that sees the title in this 11 seconds, right? You know, is that title going to be interesting that's going to draw them in? What about audience, presentation, content, interest, balance? How do you balance all of that?
So when you say presentation, do you mean how
it looks?
Okay.
I think that's what I meant. Yeah, kind of how it looks, what it says, and how engaging it is. You know, and
I think on a superficial level, the presentation could be argued to be the most important, because if it isn't going to draw someone in or capture their attention, then they won't even ever get to the content. Of course, the judges will, because they have to, but other people might not.
But if the judges have to work to get to it, that's probably not a good thing. Right. You know, so if it's muddled in the presentation, no matter how great the content is, it's going to be sadly a little bit downgraded.
And you do when you look at posters. I mean, it's not always about color. I mean, color posters I think are somewhat more appealing because I think our eye likes to see color, but they're also more expensive, as you know, and they're glossy. They're even more expensive, and so on. So, but it is. I think the presentation does matter. You know, I think that when people look at it, you want them to wanna stay. Yeah. Okay. What did you find, if anything, or what do you think about maybe things to do or things not to do? I'll take either. Important things when you're doing it, things to keep in mind.
I think we shouldn't read from the poster.
Say that again?
We shouldn't read the poster.
You shouldn't read the poster. Yes, absolutely. So what you're going to practice saying is a kind of summary across the poster. So what would be those things that you would want to include in that summary? What would be the most important things that if you were going to just give your little blurb that you wouldn't want to leave out? Your references? No, I'm just
The first thing is our purpose.
Purpose? Good. What else?
The results of the research, I
Results?
think, is important.
Yeah, and I would say in a poster, maybe even they outweigh methods in some way. Again, because the methods may or may not be understandable to the person that you're talking to. So where in a research paper, it seems like methods and results are really pretty on par. But I think in a poster, maybe results do win out a little bit. What else in the summary would you want to make sure you?
So what about people who don't have results yet?
Yeah, this is tricky. It's really tricky for judging. Because when you're walking around, according to the rubric, or at least the rubric we used to have, something that was incomplete just they couldn't win because there was no results and so they were getting zeros on these areas. But I think you've redone the rubric, so we're gonna look at the rubric here in a minute. So I think in that case then, the rationale, the methods, the research question, how about the research question? I think research question, purpose, I think those two things kind of go together, but I think that it is tricky because we do say that the posters can be, works in progress. So, I don't know. I mean, do you hypothesize? Do you talk about your, why your results will be important, or I don't know.
Discuss variables. I think it's tricky. I think with some of the technical language, you have to. That's the decision you have to make. Is how technical do I have to get to describe certain things, and that's a really good litmus test. Because if it's too technical, sometimes getting into hypotheses and working with variables, it gets really hard to explain. The relationships that you're trying to create or trying to analyze, and I think that's the point where you can kind of lose an audience when it gets to the technical. No one can sit there and think on their feet in that kind of conceptual. Well, some can. I can't. So.
Right. Well, like if you're doing framework development, what framework you're using, what your conceptual framework or your theoretical framework or your analytic framework, to talk a little bit about that. But I think it's definitely trickier. But I think it's really helpful to do posters when you're doing preliminary, when you don't have much, you're not very far along. Anything else important to do or not to do?
I have to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not all text, I've seen those, and they're very unappealing. Or you'll see giant walls of text. Usually if your paragraph's a gigantic piece of, no one will read it. It's hard to stand there and read something that long when someone's talking with you as well. So try to keep things as concise as possible and as clearly delineated as possible. So I know this is what I'm reading here, this is what I'm reading.
Yeah, they do sections. It's nice
little
to have
bite-sized
boxes.
nuggets, yeah. And then also, too many images, like if there are too many things going on in a poster, that's a really problematic thing. I've seen ones with incredibly complicated diagrams, like 7 or 8 of them, and I have no idea what I'm looking at in any kind of capacity. Even when I'm led through it, it's too much work for me to get the first one. I'm not listening for the rest of I'm to be very candid.
So to find some small piece in a complete research project, find a small piece that you really want to focus on rather than trying to focus on everything. I think that's. Also, I read about acknowledgments. If there's anybody you want to thank, you can never thank people too much. You might put a little note at the bottom acknowledging people who helped you, maybe with your analysis or your frameworks or reviewing your paper or helping you with your poster or helping you with your poster session. Yeah, we'd like to see a thank you at the bottom.
That's a category on the rubric.
Yeah, on the rubric.
Our names.
Yeah.
Present, not present. And they're really heavily weighted. So.
What else? Using active voice on a poster. So you're saying, this is what I did, this is what I found, which in research papers, depending on the journal, is more or less frowned on. But here it's really, this is what I'm doing, and you're presenting really this as your work. Colors, I've read about not too many, maybe 2 or 3 colors if you're going to do colors, and brighter isn't better necessarily, to try to find some maybe tones that are complementary and things like that. I read double spacing, and I was trying to think of posters I've written. Do I double space? I know, me neither. I always single space, but I guess it just depends how much you're trying to get on. But I guess this goes back to the how much white space do you want. But I think usually I'm in a panic and have too much stuff. So, yeah. So I don't know about time. I have just 5 minutes.
So, any questions?
In the posters, do we have to put the references as well? sometimes like if I don't have enough space on the poster, still do I have to put the references?
I mean, I think what I would recommend is to put a few key references. I mean, you know, maybe your 3 to 5 of your most important references at least, because I think without references, I think it looks less scholarly. Because it's like it seems to me it's an important part of
And
it.
I've also seen people with a little note at the bottom say, we'll have that 3 or 4, maybe 5 references, and then a note that says additional references available on request.
Oh, yes.
And so you can have, and what they'll have is just a couple of copies of the reference list in case people want that as well.
Or, you know, you're gonna have a handout, and on one side of the handout is sometimes the copy of the poster. On the other side, you could put a more full reference list. Use both sides of that handout, so you can get as much on it. I had some posters for us maybe to judge, but I don't think we have time. I think the time is too short.
Yeah, I have a question about roundtables. You talked about posters when you don't have any results, so how do you go about doing a roundtable when you don't have any results?
I think it's actually easier in a roundtable because you don't have to people are looking for a certain set of things on a poster. They're really looking for that sort of experimental design process to work out. We're looking for 5 chapters basically. But when you're in the roundtable scenario, you can really discuss. You can be upfront with the fact that you haven't gotten results yet, and you're kind of generating ideas, and you're using the space as a way to sort of think through the process you're going through, or work through, if you're in the middle of the research, sort of discuss some of the things that are emerging, as much as you can discuss them without, having gone through the full systematic process or something like that. And I think that's a really welcome thing. I think I've seen more papers that are sort of incomplete at roundtables. When you're presenting a paper, you tend to not want to, you want to have it be a complete piece and have the data all lined up and everything done. But roundtables are really great for exploratory work. Like if you're stuck on something, that's a great thing to bring to a roundtable and sort of describe the situation you're in. Kind of, this is what I did, this is where I'm at, and I'm kind of trying to think through this. These are some of the ideas I have, and I wanted to bring it to this conference and see what people thought. And usually you'll have very receptive voices to that. So.
I think that's actually true of posters as well. That posters really are a chance for you to get feedback. So there would be nothing wrong with you having a section to talk about the things you're struggling with. What are your challenges, particularly in this, because it's actually meant to be, there's going to be faculty walking around and things like that. So it's actually a really nice opportunity if there are things you're struggling with, and it gives you a chance to then at the end of your poster, maybe it's down the right, to kind of continue the conversation with the person. And people love to be asked questions like that, don't you think, at poster sessions, or even at roundtables, whatever. They're teachers, all these people are teachers by nature, so they...
Okay, thank you. So, any questions? Okay. So you told that you are going to show some posters?
Well, what I have is, and I don't know, maybe people would even want to, I don't know, to use these as, I had just some sample posters, and then I had printed the rubric for people to kind of do it. So I don't know though if even, because these posters will just be, I will just get rid of them. So I don't know if anybody even wants to just take the samples to,
yeah, maybe it will be better
to have them to look at.
One more point. This is knowledge gained from a massive mistake. It wasn't for me, it was my wife, and she was doing a poster, and she got everything ready, sent it to Kinko's or whatever coffee shop you use, and sort of, you get the big poster, you pay a lot of money for these things, and one of the images didn't represent, and they still charged her, not the full price, but for like half or something. It was still a large amount of money. So one thing you need to do is go to the actual coffee shop, have them bring it up on their computers, and then you can proofread it. So one of the things, if you're going from a Mac to a PC or something like that, sometimes things don't represent correctly.
Oh, that is great
Even
advice.
different sorts of operating, if you're going from one window to another window, sometimes things don't line up the way you want them to. So it's really good to proof your poster on the computer. They'll use the printing one time for it. So. The final point. I just thought that's sorry.
I've learned that the hard way, $100 later,
right.
yeah.
So expensive.
Okay, thank you so much, and hopefully it help you just to prepare better and better poster for the symposium, and thanks for our speakers.
Thank you.